apologies that I can't be there in person, but fortunately, over the pandemic, we've managed to find other means to reach out, and this is my contribution to your day-to-day. Think forward, building Ukraine at peace and prosperous is an inspiring theme for this panel. And the German Marshall Fund and the Boboras Foundation have assembled a strong cast of speakers who advance their ideas. In my brief remarks this morning, I just want to offer 3 brief pointers. First, Ukraine at peace requires international engagement. In an ideal world, Ukraine, like any other European country, would be protected by the power of norms, such as the inviolability of its borders. In the real world, however, such norms will not always prevent a bully from violating them. Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea and the low-level war it is waging in the Donbass were a flagrant violation of those very norms upon which we had hoped to build a new post-Cold War Europe. We must reinforce these norms, for the sake of Ukraine, but also for the sake of Europe at large. We must demonstrate that Ukraine is not alone, and that over time it will emerge stronger and more prosperous than it was before. Russia must realize that its calculus of keeping Ukraine in a state of limited sovereignty and economic dependence has failed. NATO is part of this international engagement, and for example, since 2014, NATO has increased its presence in the Black Sea. We have stepped up our cooperation with Ukraine, with more exercises, more port visits, and sharing of situational awareness. The recent Sea Breeze exercise, co-hosted by the US and Ukrainian navies, featured more than 30 participating nations. And NATO continues to support Ukraine's efforts to consolidate democracy, to strengthen the rule of law, and to reform Ukraine's security and defense sectors. All this demonstrates that on its path to peace and prosperity, Ukraine is not alone. My second point is that Ukraine at peace requires enhanced resilience. The times when peace, crisis, and conflict were 3 distinct phases are over. Cyber attacks are hitting nations below the threshold of a kinetic attack. Social media campaigns create alternative realities that seek to destabilize political communities by amplifying divisions. And the hybrid combination of military and non-military instruments blurs the boundaries between peace and war. In such an environment, resilience becomes our first line of defense. We need to beef up our cyber defenses. We need to make our energy networks more resilient, and we need to make our societies immune against fake news. This is no small affair, but Ukraine is not alone. Just a few weeks ago, I participated in a major tabletop exercise in Odesa. Co-organized by Ukraine and NATO, Coherent Resilience brought together experts from dozens of Ukraine's institutions and abroad. They exercised a scenario featuring hybrid and cyber threats against critical infrastructure, and they produced recommendations on building Ukraine's capacity to respond to them. I'm glad that Ukraine decided to incorporate the lessons of this exercise into its national resilience concept. This will make Ukraine safer, but it will also make NATO safer, because Ukraine's security directly affects Allied security. My third and final point is that Ukraine at peace requires learning from one another. As much as Ukraine can learn from NATO, NATO can also learn from Ukraine. For example, our Ukrainian friends can tell us a lot about their experience with Russian destabilization strategies. And this can help us all to anticipate what tactics Russia will be using tomorrow and to counter them. Such an exchange of best practice with like-minded nations is among the most important elements in fostering a common approach to bolstering our security. Perhaps not every piece of national experience may be applicable wholesale to other countries. However, over time, a common understanding will emerge on how to adjust our political, economic, and military toolbox in order to make it more effective. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, it takes a network to defeat a network. To destabilize Ukraine, Russia is using a network of hybrid tools and tactics. However, our network ultimately will turn out stronger because it is based on cooperation and shared values. And because the vision that lies at the heart of our network is a positive one, a prosperous Ukraine that has taken its rightful place in a peaceful Europe. Thank you, and I wish you a great conference.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for those who are still alive and still with us. We understand that it was quite a long day with a lot of interesting sessions during it, and sometimes it is quite complicated to jump from economic security to energy and then return back to the classical security about which we are going to speak now, but somehow that is logical, because we were speaking about all other spheres that are used now by the weapons. However, unfortunately, weapons still matter, and the military still matter, and the classical security still matter. So I'm very glad that during this session I have the privilege to have two wonderful American speakers who prefer to live in Europe. So I think that we have the both transatlantic views towards the security, and what we agreed that we would try to speak not just about Ukrainian security, that's something we're talking quite often, but to look at what is happening in more regional and even transatlantic context to see what the implications it may have. So let me introduce who we have now, and the detailed biographies you have in your kits. I will not read all of them, but the first on the right is Raabe, who is in charge of the Interagency partnership at the Eurocom, the European Command of the United States. And next to him is retired General Ben Hodges, who is currently the Pershing chair at the Center for the European Policy Analysis, one of the most concentrated on Europe think tanks in the United States, I would say, especially on the Eastern European studies. Ben, let me start from you, because we just had, while taking the microphones, the discussion of what does mean this Pershing chair, and for those who doesn't know, it is the name of the general of the United States. And you said that this guy, his work with Europe, it was like getting out from the isolationism and everything. So, but it was 100 years ago. We are now again talking about the United States returning to the European affairs. What does it mean for Ukraine? And do we really have the United States overcoming those statements of the Trump that Europe should care about their security by themselves?
So, of course, General Pershing was the commander of the U.S. Army in the First World War, and his arrival in France in 1917 with an American army marked the emergence of the United States from its desire to be isolationist, because we realized that our security and stability was affected by insecurity and instability on the European continent. And that's why the United States deployed to Europe in 1917, and then again in the Second World War. And we realized that we couldn't hide behind the Atlantic Ocean from what the problems were in Europe, because it affected us. And we've matured more to that, in that our prosperity, our economic prosperity, is tied directly to prosperity in Europe. The European Union in North America, that is the largest trading relationship in the world, and it will be for many years. That will not be replaced by China. Now, so, Hanna, you know, of course, I already disagreed with you once, saying that we're returning to Europe. We never left. We've had American soldiers here pretty much since, for sure, since the Second World War, and significant numbers. But it's not just about the number of soldiers, it's the capabilities. And we know that we need allies. The United States, with the biggest defense budget in history, cannot do everything it has to do in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East, in the Indo-Pacific region. And all of our best and most reliable allies come from Europe, as well as Canada and Australia.
Is the European Union recognizing this special situation, and is there a political will in the capitals to sort of engage more to carry Ukraine through this, pull, push, whatever you want, whichever word you want to use, and sort of foster this way? Or do you feel this is another, oh my dear, the East, let's not look at it, it's too difficult, there's corruption, there is all sorts of lack of rule of law, there's chaos, we don't really know what they're going to do. Is fear predominant, or do you think that the geopolitical sense that this needs to be brought into the fold is more dominant?
Yeah, thank you. All the positions, all the emotions that you described, that you listed, are there, of course, in different capitals, in different circles. But I recall from my native Estonia from 1990s the same kind of eagerness that Pablo just talked about. The eagerness to become a better country, the eagerness to transform itself, to turn itself to the West, and to be recognized by the West. If such eagerness persists in Ukraine, everything is possible. We are, and I'm very happy that the issue of among other reforms, the issue of corporate governance was brought up, and the EU and US, including here in Kiev, work very closely together on this and other issues. Now, to your question, enlargement has never been a popular policy in the EU.
It's less popular than ever, I'm afraid.
Starting with President de Gaulle vetoing the British accession twice. So it's no surprise that the views differ in the EU. For any enlargement-related decision, you need unanimity, acceptance of all member states. And at this moment, the issue of Ukrainian eventual membership is not being discussed. At the same time, all reforms that Ukraine does, all good news that Ukraine produces, all are daily interaction. Business people who need to use the trade agreement, students who go there, workers, people who go there to work, Ukrainian officials and politicians daily interacting with their EU counterparts. All this is bringing us closer together every day, and I definitely will live to see the day when the membership issue will be on the table.
All right, Matti, an optimist here. A round of applause for this bold statement, I guess. There is a first question here on my left, please, the gentleman. Do we have microphones, or could you just raise your voice?
I'll try.
We have microphones. It's easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Volodymyr Dvorik with Odesa National University. My question goes to the Deputy Assistant Secretary Dunnigan. Ms. Dunnigan, thank you so much for spending your time here with us. And I should say that your predecessor, in a way, even though geography has been restructured a little bit in the State Department, George Kemp, was here at the inaugural meeting of Odesa debate. And he was planning to come here even last year, but unfortunately it was shortly before the spring of 2020 it was cancelled, so we didn't have it last year. And I hope that you'll be able to visit Ukraine and specifically our great city, beautiful city of Odesa again. Ms. Dunnigan, your experience, as you said, has to do with economics a lot, but also with energy. A big, vast experience with energy. How do you view the future of cooperation between the US and Ukraine in the field of energy? Because, of course, energy is a painful issue here, it's a delicate issue here for us in Ukraine. And unfortunately, in the last few months, as you are well aware, much has been said in this country about the Nord Stream 2. It's been a bone of contention and probably done some damage to our relationship between Kyiv and Washington. But yet, I probably hope that we can move forward in the field of energy cooperation, despite certain disappointment that many of us here in Ukraine feel about this. And having said that, of course, you, as many members of the administration, have been critical personally of this project as well. Well, thank you. How do you see the future of cooperation in the field of energy? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's hard to replace George Kent, who I know has been affiliated with Ukraine forever, but I did have the chance to go to Kyiv last month, or the beginning of this month. It was my first trip as the new Deputy Assistant Secretary, and that was very purposeful. I wanted to go to Ukraine first because of the importance the U.S. places on our relationship. And so I have been to Kyiv. I have not yet been to Odesa, although I would welcome that. There, I lost the screen, so I wasn't sure if you could still see me. On energy, it's a really opportune question at an opportune time because, as you know, we are facing an emerging global energy crisis. And natural gas prices in Europe are at record highs. A series of events over the last year, including droughts in Brazil and China, have put pressure on prices. They put pressure on natural gas, and not just natural gas, in other areas too. And all of this happening at the time that we're working very hard to transition to cleaner sources of energy in the run-up to COP26 and really in the run-up to our future. So it's an incredibly important question, an incredibly important time. And it sheds light or focuses light on what we have been trying to do in Europe and with Ukraine for decades, which is support diversity of supply, diversity of sources, and diversity of routes. And now we're trying to do that as we transition to cleaner sources. So I know that the way that there was disappointment with Nord Stream, I think that there's been disappointment with Nord Stream 2 getting as far as it's gotten. And we've always made it clear, and this administration has made it clear, we think it's a geopolitical project, and we think it's bad for Europe, and we think it's bad for Ukraine. That said, when President Biden came into office, that pipeline was 95% done, close to. So what we have been focusing on now is looking forward. Nord Stream 2 pipeline is mostly done. What can we do to reduce risks to Ukraine and the rest of Europe when dependence on one source of supply is too high? So the joint statement that the United States completed with Germany on July 1st, it commits us and it commits Germany to putting resources behind this question and to putting our diplomatic resources behind this question too. It commits more than $240 million to helping Ukraine diversify, to helping Ukraine look to the future, to cleaner sources of energy. It commits us to ensuring that Russia does not use energy as a weapon. It commits us to continuing to work closely with the EU, and we're talking to the EU every day on this issue, to ensure that the third energy package and all of the related EU rules apply to this pipeline. So it really does commit us to continuing to work hand in hand with Ukraine and the EU and our German partners and other European partners to look at Ukraine's energy security, which goes beyond the Nord Stream 2 question. It's a much broader and important question. How do we keep Ukraine with security of supply in a changing energy world? And that's what we're really focused on.
Thank you so much for that. I might just interject that there is a new government coming up in Germany. We might see a change of tone. We have already had first indications that the opinion towards Nord Stream 2 is maybe shifting, so no promises yet, but still there might be a different emphasis in if we're lucky, maybe like 5-6 weeks before Christmas, they promised. But anyway, you wanted to sort of answer to that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dovi, for bringing this important topic to the agenda of our discussion. German government, we are already talking we were talking before. I was in Berlin just a day before the election. We were talking in the MFA, including with the representatives of the Social Democratic Party, and the question I asked to them, whether you guarantee that the agreement which you signed with the US, and many good words were in that agreement, for instance, on the transit through Ukraine till 24 and beyond, that Russia will not use gas as a weaponry against Ukraine, and if used, sanctions will follow. So they told me that this agreement will be in place and Germany will adhere to it. But let me come to the broader aspect of the Nord Stream 2 topic. Look, we now know what is happening. We see that Russia is constantly saying that Nord Stream 2 is about to be launched. We all see what is going on with the prices for gas for the European countries. We see the process which is undergoing in Germany on certification of the Nord Stream 2 company. It's now in the German hands and will later follow to the European Commission hands. By the way, Ukraine tries to participate in both processes. Two of our companies apply to be a part of the certification process in Germany, and later on will do the same with the European Commission. It looks like that Ukraine can do nothing for the time, which is wrong. Because we will fight to the end. We are working with the US side, and many thanks for the US government for the support of Ukraine in this regard till the last moment. And look, we are thinking broadly. We understand that the winter will be hard, the winter will be cold, and there will be probably less of gas than it should be. We experienced that situation back in 2009 together with the European Union members. In order not to have this situation happen, President Zelensky appeared with the initiative, and yesterday he wrote two letters to two presidents, President Charles Michel and President Ursula von der Leyen, with his concrete proposals. We don't understand that something has to be changed, and this is about broad approach to the energy security. So, President proposes for additional transit of additional volumes of gas through Ukrainian gas transit system with a low price for the transit, or meaning for Russia. That means we will satisfy the demands of the European Union countries to get the additional volumes of gas. That means we will deprive Russia of this blackmailing instrument, which they are now doing. And yes, we will be safe here in Ukraine during the winter time. But very important, this is about general European energy security. And I know that those proposals were yesterday discussed during the European Union ministerial energy meeting and will be discussed today, and hopefully we'll get the answer. Because what we need together, if we're talking about push, you mentioned push, we need to push together on Russia in this regard. Ukraine is pushing, some other members are pushing, but let's have this joint effort, because this is about us. This energy security, this cold winter, it's about us. It's about Ukraine, it's about Germany, it's about other, it's about Moldova association trio. When Moldova asked in vain for additional amounts of gas, because you know what's going on with their gas contract with Russia, we immediately gave them, just the same day as the Prime Minister of Moldova wrote a letter to Prime Minister of Ukraine, this same day, the National Security Council of Ukraine took a decision to give immediately the supplies of Ukrainian gas to Moldova, and our Naftogaz company is participating in the tenders, and we're ready to render this helpful hand, because now it's just help. So this is my answer to what is Ukraine is doing concretely in terms of being a part of the European security. Energy is only one aspect, but very important one.
Well, I come to you, but I'd like to get Matti involved at this point, because the energy ministers didn't sound particularly united when they sort of parted a couple of days ago. So you think that this stronger cooperation on energy security for everyone, for Ukraine, for Europe, can be brought about on the political background, that some countries want something else than some other countries?
I think the disagreements you're referring to were concerning the fundamental structure of EU's energy or EU gas market. it's pretty clear that fundamental architecture will, for foreseeable future, remain the same. As for the issues, and yes, Igor listed them in a very right way. For the issues that were discussed among the EU leaders and Ukraine's leaders and are being discussed, definitely this gas crisis has made many of us think at these issues anew in a different way. What Ukraine has now, how Ukraine has now helped Moldova is very commendable, of course. The issues that were discussed at the summit concerned energy security in the broadest sense of the word. There were first ideas on how to use Ukraine's gas storages to also increase EU's energy security supply, etc. So it is true, many new ideas are there and much of the work is ongoing, but has just started, I'm afraid.
But how do we get through the winter? You think this can be done together?
What exactly?
Get through the winter. So keep the gas flowing. Do what about the empty storage? You call them tanks, yeah, I guess.
We don't have another way out, otherwise we'll freeze. I mean, yes, gas storages, I forgot to mention, very important. Ukraine has a capacity of 31 BCM of gas storages. They are not yet fully, so please use it. I mean, we were offering this. We're offering a broader discussion because gas is now a burning issue, unfortunately, before the winter time. But we're talking about other layers of our cooperation in the energy area. Electricity, for instance. You might know that Ukraine is ready to join in 2023 to ENTSO-E, this general European energy system. We are already talking to our European partners of how it should happen, because it's also technically complicated and unfortunately might become politically complicated, because Russia is not only playing with gas, it might play with other with our energy resources as well. We are talking about renewables and Green Deal. I was asking my German partners, the good things you are talking about Ukraine as a potential huge producer of hydrogen or whatever, is this for real? You are going to support Ukraine? Yes, they say, we will be doing this. So that's why during the last summit, my president invited to have this high-level strategic dialogue on the energy issues in the European Union with the participation of Ukraine. So on the level of heads of government and state, the leadership of the EU and the leadership of Ukraine. It was met with quite a good feelings, I think. So we will be also doing this. So, well, we'll have to survive.
Pablo, you wanted to jump in here.
Just a simple point. We need our lessons learned. Just get back to summer. It was clear that the demand in Asia had started growing. It was clear that Putin has to catch this opportunity to push against Europe. Now he is talking about long-term contracts again, returning to this logic on his conditions. And now get back to our gas storages. It's 32. Now we have 18, school math. What is the difference? 14. In order to avoid crisis, you would have needed approximately 20 plus, 2025. Why not to fill up the storages still in summer? Technically, possible, simple. Financially, simple rubbish. Why not? Simply ask this question, why not? It could have prevented basically the hardship of the crisis with all kind of political implications. And it's a very simple example which basically shows that energy resilience is something we need not to just talk about, we need to engage. Tomorrow we're going to present a special, a bit of research about energy resilience, actually also taken into contact this gas issue. And I believe it's time not to start talking about strategic dialogue, strategic groups, good working groups. It's not about that. It's time to engage Ukraine, to incorporate Ukraine in key EU exercises, in key EU groups where we will be covered together with the EU by all security and safety clauses. Fundamentally, and it was years before, we have taken this initiative to fully transform EU energy legislation in our association agreement, fully, not just one by one, fully. So why not? So a number of very simple questions which are somehow in the air. Let's start asking, questions which are not comfortable questions. And these are questions not only for Ukraine, these are questions also for the European Union. Dialogues are fine, strategic dialogues are even better. But there are very important lessons and drawbacks from what had happened in order not to let Putin to come to another gas war this winter.
I think if one looks at what is right now happening in and around the Moldovan gas situation, that would give one a good sense of the how, in the very nearest future, these kinds of issues could be solved in Europe, including with Ukrainian participation. That's very clear. If you look at the elements, additional, support from partners when you need additional flows from Europe, additional capacities, and with that also, this all puts pressure on the main supplier as well, which has already yielded some results.
All right, I have a new question here, and the lady in the middle, please.
Can I have the mic? I'm not sure how loud I can be. I can. This way. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ludmila Minister, since recently independent member of parliament. And I hear a lot during this first panel, very accurate but actually quite sad definition that our partners, and I'm really grateful to them for that, are pushing or dragging Ukraine into the, or pulling or whatever, into the integration. Sad because actually the people of Ukraine, if we look at the latest polls, are fully supporting European and Euro-Atlantic integration. Almost 70% of Ukrainian citizens are fully supportive of the integration of Ukraine with the European Union, and more than 50% already understand the benefits of Ukraine joining NATO and continuing cooperation in that direction. However, we also see that reform process in Ukraine meets certain challenges, and even when crucial important reforms are being passed, they have either partial effect, or we see a lot of difficulties in implementing them.
Excuse me, but who would you like to address your question?
So the question is to our partners, international partners, because there is a lot of goodwill actually, not only inside the government, but outside of different stakeholders, civil society, different political forces in the country, to make this reform process not only better and more transparent,